Rebecca with BexxFineArt. I'm sorry it's been so long since my last video. I just needed a little bit of a mental break with all the quarantine and everything. I'm sure you all felt the same at some point. But I'm back and I've got a fun series of videos that I'm going to be releasing. And they are how to paint a nebula onto your Hydro Flask. So this actually has more of a Milky Way look to it. So the videos I'm going over are actually going to be how to do this really awesome cloud-like texture on here. Not on this bottle, it's actually a custom bottle for somebody. So for today's video specifically, I will be talking about all of the background stuff and how we get those awesome cloud shapes onto here. And then the next two videos will be more about the details and the stars. So let's go ahead and look at our supplies. This customer wanted lots of blues and purples for her Nebula bottle, so that's what I'm gonna be doing. So I'll show you guys a little snapshot of the purples. They're the same as what I usually use. Blue, primary blue of course. You can see I'm using the paint bottles to block all of my stuff over there. I may end up using some other colors as I go along, so I will definitely list those at the bottom of the video. And then aside from the colors, I have my array of sponges. They're all makeup sponges because personally I think those work the best in achieving that cloud-like texture. I've done it before with a brush and it's just not as easy. It's just so much easier to use these sponges because depending on the sponge you get different shapes with the clouds, and I don't know, they just work perfectly in my opinion. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you've seen my other videos, you know I pretty much always have a dirty paint palette. So it's hard to tell, but I'm actually going to be starting with the whites and the pink and purples right in here. So you can kind of see they're a little glossy. And I'm going to be laying down a base for the clouds first, so kind of just mixing all these colors together, and then I'll start to add in the details using the white. Decided to mix a little bit of white in with my pink just to start because this pink is actually a little bit lighter anyways. And all I'm doing is just scrubbing it in a circular motion into the color that I already have down, and this obviously was with the spray paint. I do have a separate video that is a tutorial on how to spray paint your bottle. It is 100% easier than just painting it with acrylic or whatever. So definitely spray paint it for your base colors. It will make your life so much easier. But the brand I use for that is Krylon. So if you're curious on how to spray paint your bottles, go ahead and check out that other video of mine. So again, just these circular motions with the sponge. It's going to be a little bit splotchy to start, but that'll help us kind of identify where we want those highlights and shadows to be. And it does already start to give us like that cloud-like texture. So you'll notice here it's a little bit darker, so I'm gonna use less white with what I scrub in here. I mean, whatever is already on the sponge, I'm just gonna go ahead and use, but I'm using the more saturated pink. I don't have as much white mixed in. And we're just adding a little bit of dimension to the spray paint that's already there. So I'm going to be doing the same thing all over the bottle with my pinks and purples. I'm gonna go ahead and have that be a time lapse, and then I'll pause it whenever there's some details that you guys need to know. I've got my base layer of the paint on. So you can see in some areas I've already got some texturing happening. So what I'm going to be doing is mixing a little bit more of the white kind of loosely into the colors. So by that I mean I'll just kind of swirl it. That way when I start sponging on here, I'll get a mix of white and whatever color I'm using. Here's my sponge, so you can see it's a mixture. And I'm going to continue that same technique I was already doing, where I'm kind of just going in a circle, sort of scrubbing those colors on a little randomly. And as I go, I'll continue to blend and add more layers and blend and add more layers. So it's not like all of a sudden this is done. It really does take quite a bit of layering and a lot of patience in order for you to be happy with that end result. I would say that this step is really where I'm more just adding some highlights to the bottle. I'm not necessarily finishing these areas. So these will be where I'll go back in with maybe even lighter shades of pink and white to highlight those clouds. All right, so again, if you can see, I'm like curving the sponge as I go, kind of pressing the tip down and then moving it in a circle. And then I kind of go around the base of the clouds to smooth out the bottom. So then you get more of that realistic and soft, kind of bubbly looking shape. Some areas I'll just go and do quick little dabs to get more of a smaller texture, and then I might even do bigger circles to get some bigger heads of the clouds. So really it's just a mix. It's kind of like, if you don't like how it looks, then dab right over it and start again. It's all about layering and continuously blending. As you can see, I've kind of added some shadowy purples to the bottle. And basically that's just the same technique as I have been using. I'm using just the straight dark purple. And you can see when I first put it on, here I'll put a bigger blob, it is very strong and it doesn't seem to go with the rest of the bottle. So that's why I am doing these nice little taps with the sponge, just kind of blending it into the other areas around it. And as I do that, I'm gradually carrying the paint over. So it's not only spreading directly around it, but also I'm just getting more paint on the sponge as I continue to do those little dabs. So then I can spread it really around this whole area. So I do go back and forth between adding highlights and shadows. I think you kind of have to work both at the same time in order to get that more realistic look to your bottle. So don't feel like you have to do only the shadows first or only the highlights first, because really, you know, they work together. So you want to work on them at the same time. So that way, you know, I can say, all right, this area looks good. I need to create that same look over here, and vice versa. Also, working on the shadows and the highlights at the same time, you're also able to see where you might need some more contrast. So if I was only adding the highlights down here, I wouldn't maybe know where's the right place to put the shadows. So I can just go at the same time, and this just allows me to see if I like the contrast that I've created here, if I should continue to do it, or if it should just be in one spot. Alrighty, so here is the progress so far. I've got a lot more texture going on, obviously quite a bit of shadows. So now, even though I'm still not done with the clouds, I'm gonna start to add in my blue texturing just so I can make sure everything is blending together properly. So again, I'll be using my sponge, and then I'm gonna be using a combination of these two blues and white, and we're just going to start mixing it in with everything else. So you can see that I am doing those same techniques with the sponge, dabbing, and just adding some texture to create the illusion of more clouds. And when I get close to another color, I will add some of the blue and then kind of use the side of the sponge to blend it in. That way it doesn't overpower and they all look like they're blending together. So as you can see, I've really tried to accentuate these darker areas because those will be more of my areas of negative space, which will help to make the rest of the clouds pop forward. So that's kind of what I'm working on at this moment, is really building in that negative space, and then I'll go back and add more midtones and highlights to it. Okay, so here is the finished background for my Nebula bottle. And you can see if you really liked it how it was, you could just go ahead and add stars to it. I'm going to make a separate video going over how to add details to the clouds and other details that you can add, as well as stars. So that'll be a part of the same bottle series. So I hope that you guys check that out. I also hope that you found this video helpful. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed part 1 of this series. Stay tuned for part 2, which will be how to paint the details in the nebula. I'll be showing you a couple different techniques to get that more realistic look. If you've got any questions, you want to share some art with me, or maybe you're interested in some custom art, feel free to email me. It's info.bexx@gmail.com. And then be sure to check out my different social media outlets. Both Instagram and TikTok are at BexxFineArt. All right, see you guys next time.